morning. I'm Evangelist Yulander McTeer. You are tuning in to my new television show, Empowerment for All. Today is the continuation from what I brought you from my first show that launched April 2nd of this year, Change Your Channel. Today I'm going to be talking once again from the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, chapter 16, verse 1 through 22, chapter 17, verse 1 through 58, chapter 18, verse 8 and 9. Now, I know you're probably saying to yourself, oh my goodness, that's a lot of scriptures. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to chime in, as I promised you, to take you how when God anointed David to be the king, and David reigned over 40 years, how David actually began and prepared himself for the great walk God was going to take him into, being the king. Now, for those of you who may miss my show, don't be discouraged, stay encouraged. You can always tune into my shows on my website, www.ymcteer, Empowerment for All. Follow me on Twitter at @ymcteer, Facebook, Evangelist Yulander McTeer, Instagram, Evangelist Y McTeer. For those of you who have given me feedback on my show, thank you so much for your support. Many of you have reached out, and I'm greatly, greatly, greatly encouraged to continue to bring to you the New Age Christianity that I promised you. No restrictions, no drawbacks, just pure word and encouragement to empower you to move forward and come into the kingdom of the Lord so you can celebrate the glory, receive your harvest, and be blessed beyond measures. For those of you who haven't bought my book, you can do so through Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, and many other outlets. It's titled The Tragic Times of a Woman by me, the author, Yulander McTeer. Now let's go right into the time that we're going to spend today changing your channel. Now, as I left off at my last show, Samuel was anointed to anoint King David. Saul was still the king, but Saul displeased God. He started battles. God said, I didn't tell you to do that. So Samuel, who always followed God's pathway, went to Jesse, and out of Jesse's 8 sons, David, the baby boy, who was always in the back, but God brought him to the front. God said, Samuel, that's who I want for you to anoint king. So Samuel, being obedient, anointed David with being the king with oil. But before I go past that, I want to share something with you. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Many of you may be even looking at me saying, wow, she doesn't fit the mold. But you know what? God sees my heart. So as I'm sitting here, ordained and chosen by God as an evangelist, God spoke to me and said, worry not about the people. I saw your heart, my daughter. You are sassy, but you're saved. Praise God. Now, as Samuel once again anointed David, the Spirit of God departed from Saul. This caused problems for Saul. He became very distressed, very upset, always had issues. But Saul's servant said, listen, man, you need to have some relaxation and some peace. Let's seek you a harp player. And one of Saul's servants said, I know a young man who plays the harp that can soothe you. So Saul said to his messengers, go get this man. So the messenger showed up to Jesse, who is David's dad, and said, send David to play the harp for Saul. Jesse, always being obedient, put David on one of his donkeys with food and sent him to Saul. As David arrived in front of Saul, key factor, Samuel 16, verse 21. So David came to Saul and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and David became Saul's armor bearer. Now moving forward, 1 Samuel 17, once again, verse 1 through 58. Now, Everything is calm. Saul thinks he's got peace. But no, Saul. God is still going to challenge you. The Philistines, who was Saul's enemies, because Saul's army was Israel. The Philistines' champion, their colonel, the infamous giant Goliath, manifests himself strong. And the Philistines are on one side of the mountain, the Israelites are on the other side of the mountain. So at this time, Goliath says, guess what? I'm going to come up and I'm going to challenge the good Saul. So 1 Samuel 17, verse 8. Then he, Goliath, stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And you, the servants of Saul, choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. Verse 9. Is he able to fight with me and kill me? Then will we be your servants. But if I, Goliath, prevail against him and kill him, then you all shall be our servants and serve us. So really what Goliath was saying, if I win, it's my way. If you win, it's Saul's way. So Jesse got word there was trouble. And Jesse was concerned because out of his 8 sons, not David, his 3 oldest sons were on Saul's army. Not on, but in Saul's army. He sent David. He said, go check on my boys, but don't go without food. So David, of course, being obedient, went to check on his brothers, taking the food his father had asked him to take. And also his father asked him to bring back the news of what was going on. So when David got there, he began to talk and chatter, but he did collaborate with his oldest brother, Eliab. And Eliab said to David, 1 Samuel 17, verse 28. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spake to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And he said, why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said in verse 29, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? Verse 30, then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. Verse 31, now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported this to Saul. And Saul sent for David. And Saul said to David, you're a young man. What are you trying to do to go out here and battle Goliath? This is a champion. This is a king of armies. In so many words, not verbatim in the Bible. But David had to let Saul know, I might be young, but I got power. So moving on to in 1 Samuel 17:34, David said to Saul, your servant, myself, used to keep his father's sheep. And when a lion or bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, verse 35, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose against me, I caught it by the beard and struck and killed it. Verse 36, your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moving forward, by this time, Saul is saying, wow, this is amazing to me. This is a young man, but he got some power. So moving on in the last sentence of verse 37, Saul gives David the okay. He says, go, and the Lord be with you. But Saul was wise. He wasn't going to send David on the battlefield without his armor. When God prepares you for battle, you have to have your armor. You got to have your breastplate of righteousness on, your feet planted, your shield of faith, and your sword. So as Saul is preparing David, David is saying, this is a lot for me to carry. This doesn't feel really comfortable. I can't walk with all this armor on. So David did a few readjustments. But one thing David didn't do, he never took off his sword. So David filled a bag with 5 stones and said, oh, I'm ready now. So David moved forward, approaching the mountainside, approaching the great giant Goliath, who stood at 6 feet tall, and moving on to one of the most powerful verses that really touched me, and I hope it touches you. 1 Samuel 17:45. Then David said to the Philistine, Goliath, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Verse 46. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God of Israel. Now, moving on to verse 47. Then all this assembly shall know, and the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's. And he will give you, Goliath, into my hands. Now, as we all know, and we all have been taught, and we all know the greatness of the Bible, it is always told and always spoke about that David killed Goliath. Here right now, 1 Samuel 17, verse 49, this is when David kills Goliath. David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine, Goliath, in his forehead, so that the stone sank all the way into Goliath's forehead, and he fell to the ground. But here's what many pastors, bishops don't chime in on. David goes a step further with Goliath. One step further. Oh, he got him in the head and knocked him out with the rock. But David was determined to show Saul, I told you, I can go get a lamb out of a lion and bear's mouth with my bare hand. So I'm going to get Goliath. And David did exactly that. So moving forward, 1 Samuel 17, verse 50. David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Verse 51. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him. But here's where it gets powerful, everyone. He cut off Goliath's head. I will repeat. He cut off that demon. He cut off that giant, the good Goliath who thought he couldn't be touched. But here's mighty, mighty, small King David. Not only did he throw a stone and sink it in his forehead, he took his head and cut it off and said, I'm going to take it back to Saul, because we're going to praise now that you gone, you dead. I've done what I said I was going to do. I have killed this giant. So Saul was amazed when David returned back, because he's holding a man's head in his hand. And Saul was always scared of Goliath. But here is David saying, my master, I have done what you wanted me to do, what I told you I could do. So Saul, once again, was in shock. He was in awe. He asked his commander-in-chief, Abner, who is this man, David? Who is he? I know he's my armor bearer, but it's something more to this mighty man. So Abner summoned David again. David stood there and said, guess what, Saul? I am the son of Jesse. You know who Jesse is, Saul? Your servant. Wow. So I share this with you today to remind you, look how God is changing the channel. God changed the channel right in front of Saul's face. Saul thought he was still going to be the baddest man in the land and take control. But he was so afraid of Goliath that God instantly put in his pathway not only his armor bearer David, not only David being his harp player that would soothe him when he was distressed once the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul, but now he has conquered this great war that Saul couldn't conquer. So moving forward, which I will continue to share with you the next show, because God said my people so much need to continuously change their channel. They're not changing their channel. They're staying stagnant. They're in one place. So they're not advancing to do all the things I've called them to do. We have so much greatness and so many things inside of us. We need to continue to move and do the things that we need to do. So just to give you a little insight, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 8 and 9. Now, not only did Saul wonder who David was, everybody in the land began to sing praises to David. But what they were singing displeased Saul. Verse 8, Samuel 18, verse 8. Then Saul became very angry, and the saying displeased him. And you're asking me, well, evangelist, what was that saying? They said, wow, Saul killed thousands, but David killed 10,000. So Saul You could imagine him saying to himself, wow, that makes me look real small. That makes me look bad. I'm supposed to be the big bad king. Here King David has come and shut it down. So at this point in time, 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 9. So Saul eyed David from that day forward. What it means by eyed him, it means basically he was upset. He was jealous because David had all the glory and was getting all the attention. So I say to you today as I end the program, continuing, change your channel. You continue to change your channels in your life. When God has predestined you to do what you need to do, move forward like a rushing wind. Because whatever God has commanded you to do and he's placed inside of you, he's going to see you through it. He only, because he is I am that I am, can elevate you and take you to the next level. As you see, he's taking David into being a great king and reigning over 40 years. Don't ever be discouraged. Stay encouraged. Laugh at your enemies. Because I, myself, Evangelist Yulander McTeer, sit here in front of you as a testimony. I was that vessel, just like David. I stayed in the back, serving, doing what I needed to do, people laughing at me and talking about me. Well, God summoned me and said, now, my daughter, you'll come to the front. So just as God does it for me, he's not a judge of people. He'll do it for you. I thank you for tuning in to my show. I'm never going to give you too much, but just enough. And I always end my shows with prayer, because prayer is what changes things. Prayer is what keeps your faith whole. Prayer is what will carry you. So today here at Empowerment for All, I'm going to close with Psalms 108, verse 1 through 6, 12 through 13. Once again, I am closing today my show, Empowerment for All, with Psalms 108, verse 1 through 6, 12 through 13. Oh God, my heart is steadfast. I sing and give praise even with my glory. Awake, lute and harp. I will awake in the dawn. I will praise you, O Lord, among the peoples, and I will sing praises to you among the nations. For your mercy is great above the heavens, and your truth reaches to the clouds. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and your glory above all the earth, that your beloved may be delivered. Save with your right hand, and hear me. Give us help from trouble, for the help of man is useless. Through God, we will do valiantly, for it is He, God, who shall tread down our enemies. Now, I hope you've been blessed. But before I close, God spoke to me and said, give the people a prophetic word today. Allow them to change their channel. Many of you will be watching my broadcast. God told me to share with you. He's going to expose your Goliaths. He's going to take down your giants. And it's not going to take God long. He's going to do exactly what King David did with Goliath for your enemies. He's going to give them one clear shot to the forehead and knock them out your life. So I tell you today, stay encouraged, be empowered. I'm praying for you as well as I hope you're praying for me. My show will air twice a month. Always, once again, follow me on social media to see these broadcasts and see upcoming broadcasts. Thank you so much. God bless you. Have a great day. And remember,